If you have a daily driven vehicle, there's a good chance it'll eventually get a scratch on it, whether that be from a belt buckle or a zipper in your coat, or if a friend dropped a suitcase in your trunk. We're gonna show you how to fix those today with just a few tools and a little bit of elbow grease. So anytime you do a paint correction, you wanna make sure the surface that you're working with is as clean as it can possibly be. So we started this off with a nice car wash, and then we came through with a clay bar, and we clay barred this to remove any kind of fallout or decontamination that was on the paint. I'm not sure if you can hear this or not, but if you flip your hand over to the back side and rub across, you'll feel how smooth it is versus on this side. Not sure if you can hear that or not, but we'll get a close-up of it. But you can really actually hear the difference in how smooth it is on top of feeling it. So once you feel it super smooth like that and you feel no contamination, the vehicle's nice and clean, then you know you're down to a bare surface and we can actually get down to correcting the paint. So let's jump into that. So first part of the paint correction process is you want to inspect the scratches that you're working with to see what kind of process you're going to need to use. So here we conveniently have 3 different style scratches. You have a real light one here, another medium light kind of one there, and there's a heavy scratch right here. A good way to quick test it, it's not by any means scientific, but it's a quick way if you want to check. You take your fingernail and you drag it across. It should stop, or it shouldn't stop. If it does stop, it means that that's all the way down through the paint into the color, and there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to remove that scratch. Versus one like this, where it's like you're dragging your finger across right over top of it, it doesn't stop when it's in there. So I know this is just in the clear coat, not all the way down to the paint, so it'll be a better chance of getting that one removed. To remove scratches, what we're essentially doing is taking the hills and valleys of the paint. So if you looked at a microscopic level, it would be a lot of hills and valleys, and we're gonna level those out as best we can. And then you wanna get that highest part down to matching the lowest part, so that's the way the scratch isn't showing. So we're gonna try doing it by hand here to show you what you can do if you don't have any professional tools to do it. And if that doesn't work, then we'll throw the heavy tools at it. So anytime you're doing a paint correction, you wanna start with the least aggressive option first, and then work your way up to more aggressive options. That way you're not hitting the car with the heaviest cutting compound that you would possibly have and taking off more than what's necessary. So we're gonna start out with a polish and seal. We have 2 options today, clear coat compound, polish and seal. Polish and seal is a lot less aggressive. The clear coat compound we might have to jump into to get some of these heavier scratches out, but we're gonna start with the least first and see what we can get to. So you just put a little bit on a pad here, or a lot. And we're gonna start with some of these finer scratches here. So all you'd wanna do is rub that in a nice circle like this. And again, we're trying to level out the hills and valleys. I'm bringing it all down to one surface here. So you just gotta cover the surface area, get some good elbow grease, work it in there. Obviously, it's a much easier task to do when you are using like a machine that can spin all these at 3,000 RPMs for you, but it's nothing you can't do with a little bit of elbow grease as well. So it's a nice little test there. Now we're gonna wipe this down just to test to see how we're looking. Now, of course, the scratches are still there. We might have gotten out some of the smaller marring caused by drying the vehicle or anything like that, but to get some of those heavier scratches, we're gonna need a more serious compound. Okay, now we're moving up to a little more aggressive option, the clear coat compound. And keep in mind, when you use a compound, especially on a darker paint like this, a lot of times you'll have to go back over that then with a polish, just to make sure that any of the fine scratches, even caused by a compound, are removed. So help us get a little bit closer to removing that scratch. Okay, just put a little bit on a pad like that. And when you're using a compound, you don't necessarily need to cover every square inch. Like for this, we're using this heavier compound to go after these heavier scratches. So you really want to focus on where the scratches are at rather than covering the whole surface area of the vehicle, because you're going to have to go back over and repolish areas that anywhere you put this compound. Go for this heavier scratch. Now this scratch up here is the one that we had trouble getting our nail stuck in, so this is really going to be a true test to see if we can actually polish this out by hand. It's going to be a really tough one. That'll be even tough with a machine, if it's even possible. If you can't get out a scratch that deep with a machine even, then you're kind of left with either wet sanding it or even going all the way up to repainting the vehicle. So let's wipe that down, see what it looks like. Now with just the hand applied, it did lighten up the scratches a little bit, but I'm not sure if you can see in here, Brett, there's little tiny scratches that you can see. That grit is pretty heavy, and what it's trying to do is go down and knock down the edges to, again, level out all those hills and valleys. So we created all these small scratches by using a heavier grit compound. So then we would just need to go back over those with like a polish and seal or a softer compound to get out these finer scratches. But looks like we're gonna need a little bit more elbow grease on these with the heavier duty compound. And then we'll go back in with the polish and seal. And again, this is just elbow grease, so a little bit like moderate pressure, put it on the pad here, and it's just repetitions here. So you think about a machine that's doing this 3,000 times a minute versus my hand. You might be here for a little bit using the hand method, but it might save you a couple $100 on going out and buying a polisher. So I would not suggest doing this for your whole vehicle. It might take you a bunch of hours to do that, but for doing a spot treat on these scratches, it's not a bad option for it. And another common question we get, people asking is like, how do I know that I'm not burning through my paint? And there's a couple different options. I mean, the best way to do it is to get a paint depth gauge, and you can measure how thick the clear coat is in the paint on the actual surface of the car. Then you measure the thickness of the clear coat in the paint in the door jamb. The door jamb's where they spray the least amount of clear coat, so you can just subtract that from the figure that you got from the painted surface, and you can get to a rough number of how thick your clear coat actually is. If you're not going that route, and you're just eyeballing it, you gotta be really careful that you're not going too crazy. When you're using just a hand, you need to be going for quite a while to kind of burn through the paint with it, because you're really not making that much friction, just doing it by hand. But if you're using something like a rotary polisher, it's a lot easy to burn paint, especially on like an edge or something like that. Anytime you do any kind of edges, you wanna be really careful. How you'll know you burnt through it is like on a gloss paint like this. It'll almost look like a matte paint. It won't have any kind of shine to it. That's how you know you've burnt through the clear coat and you've made it all the way down to the paint, which is what we're not trying to do. All right, so a little progress update here. With a little bit of the elbow grease, so we're able to get the finer scratches almost gone. Any of the light marring is completely gone. But these fine scratches you can still see them in the light, and you can still see that heavy duty scratch that's down through the clear is definitely still there. Now we're gonna switch over to using a machine just to see if we can get some more revolutions in here, make it go a little bit faster for us. Now keep in mind, you wanna try and judge what scratches you're gonna be chasing and which ones you aren't. Because like something like this, that's down through the clear coat, and if we can polish it to make it look a lot less worse, but then we're also minimizing the amount of clear coat that we have on the vehicle. So if we start out with 5 mils of clear, and this scratch might be 4.5 mils deep, well, if we polish off 4.5 mils of clear, now you only have a 0.5 mil left to protect the paint from any kind of sun or UV damage. So try and use your best judgment. Is this scratch really that offensive? Is it really that bad? Do we need to chase after that one? Or is it something we can just touch up the surrounding areas and make it look a lot less worse? So for this one, we're gonna hit it with the machine, see if we can get a little bit better. But if not, we're just gonna touch them up, make them look the best we can. That way we're not minimizing the amount of clear left on the vehicle. So let's jump into that. All right, so another thing to keep in mind is what equipment you're using. Now let's switch over using a machine. This one is a dual action polisher. So you'll see it actually is spinning in a circle and spinning side to side. So it's not exactly putting as much friction as if you were to have like a rotary polish that only spins in one circle, because you'd be staying in one area, putting all that friction in one spot rather than it oscillating back and forth and distributing that heat in the friction. So if you're using a dual action polisher like this, it's gonna take you a little bit longer because it's not cutting quite as fast, but it's a lot safer than using like something like a rotary, because if you've never used a rotary before, you can kind of get yourself in trouble. Something like this, you really got to be doing something for a pretty long time to be taking off your clear coat or be doing anything like that. So you'll see like a lot of professional detailers will use a rotary polisher to knock down the big scratches and really get in there and start taking away the major scratches, but then they'll follow up with like a dual action polisher like this to do a fine polish, because it's really not super aggressive, so you're able to get a really good, nice finish with something like this. A little bit of technique when you're using a DA, you'll see a lot of people will do straight lines, like so, and then they'll follow it up, going straight up and down. Now the purpose of this, now again, it's almost like we're, lack of better terms, sanding down that clear coat, so we want it to be even. When we're doing by hand, we're only really doing 10, 20 revolutions in a second, so it's like, or a minute, so it's not like it's doing as much work as something like this, where it's doing 2,000 to 3,000 revolutions a minute. So you really want to keep a consistent pattern when you're using a machine. That way it's not creating any kind of like swirling effects or any unsightly paint finishes you don't want. So after you covered over it once or twice, whatever you're kind of feeling like, and how that polish is starting to dry out, then you want to quick wipe it down, check to see your work, see what you're working with here, see what the progress is like. This towel's getting kind of grabby on me. A lot of times you'll know when to check it by the kind of polish you're using, whether it's like it's working away too much, or if you've just done a couple passes and it's starting to dry out, maybe you need to reapply some of the polish or compound, whatever you're using. Let me flip to a fresh side here. All right, we're making progress here. So scratches are getting a little bit harder to see. We're gonna keep going at it though. See if we can improve on those. All right, so now we came in there with a heavy cut to try and do the best we can to get all those heavy scratches out. If you take a quick look at it, you can tell that scratch that had our fingernail getting caught in it, it was all the way through the clear. We're not getting out that one. These ones are lightened up significantly though. Honestly, we probably could get these out if we kept going at it, but again, we're not trying to diminish too much of the clear coat. We're trying to keep as much of that protection on there as we can. So now that we went through with a whole cut to it, it might be hard to see in this light, but if you see in the right light, it'll look like it's a hologram all over it. It's called swirling. It's from the machine making all kinds of fine cuts to try and level out that clear coat. So you want to come through with a less aggressive, so something like our polish and seal here. And as you go over the surface of that, it'll remove any of those light scratches. It's kind of just like when you're sanding wood and you go from like an 80 grit sandpaper up to like a 200 grit to like a 400 grit. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're trying to get a lesser and lesser grit. That way we can get up to the shiniest surface possible. So if you're doing this by hand, just like earlier, just do the circular motions like this. Keep going with it. But if you invested in a machine to make this job a little bit easier for you, then you would just want to put a little bit on the surface like that. Put a couple spots on your pad. And go through it. Yep, same process with this one. We just want to use about moderate pressure. It's going to cover the surfaces. We're going to go in straight lines, back and forth like this. And then we're going to go vertical lines. I hope that's vertical for you, it's horizontal for me. Now this stage, we're really not trying to remove any scratches because we already did all of that, all of the major scratches. So we're just trying to get the softest of scratches we took out or we created with the compound. So it might be a little bit harder to see it as you're going because you're not actually seeing the big scratches going away like you would with some of the other polishes, compounds. So after you've done a couple passes here, come through, wipe it off. The nice part about using something like a polish and seal, it's kind of like a two-step in one here because you're doing the polishing part, but you're also laying down a sealant at the same time. So that's great if you're looking to just seal the vehicle, have about 4 to 6 months of protection on there. But if you're looking to ceramic coat the vehicle, you might not want to use something that has like a sealant in it. You want to use just a straight polish, so keep that in mind. So if you've been following along with us, hopefully that answers some of the mystery that what a detailer is doing to get those scratches out of your vehicle. If you want to give it a try yourself, either a hand polish or with a machine, let us know how it worked out for you down in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.